What's up, YouTube? It is Ben with Bearded Spruce, and today I know you might be wondering, where am I right now? I'm actually in our basement, in our future guest room space, essentially. When we first bought this house, there was a ton of potential down here in the basement. Some of the walls were up, some of them needed to be removed. Which I'll get into kind of a recap of this whole basement project at some point. But today we're focusing on the bathroom, and specifically the bathroom floor. So originally, my wife is the mastermind behind all of our design choices, and does a great job envisioning the amazing aesthetic. This time around, we had picked out a tile, and I'll show some photos right now of what the floor in here looked like before. If you can't tell from these photos, it was a disaster in here. It was lumpy and bumpy and had some adhesive from old tile that had been ripped up, and some chunks of the tile still from probably years and years ago when it was first remodeled or first turned into a bathroom down here. And so I had to figure out, do I want to grind it all down and do hours and hours of using a grinding tool, and it's dusty and loud and my dog gets angry at me when I do it? Or do I tackle trying to use a self-leveling concrete agent that, in complete honesty, was very nerve-wracking to think about mixing a bunch of concrete. And I've heard horror stories of it peeling up if you don't do it correctly, and the seam between two different buckets or two different bags can look super ugly, and it can just crumble with time and all that kind of stuff. And so I ended up doing a little bit of grinding work in one of the corners, and I spent about 2.5 hours one Saturday morning with headphones on and dust everywhere and my vacuum going, so I could eliminate as much dust as I could, realizing that it was going to take hours and hours and hours to level this floor. And so I chose to go the route that was the most intimidating to me and the thing I know the least about with concrete. And man, I'll kind of move out of the way a little bit, but the final product convinced us to not lay tile on this floor. So the new plan, after seeing how it turned out and how beautiful this flooring is, and I'll have some final photos or final footage of the end product at the end of this video, but convinced us to return our tile or use it for a different product or project in the future, and just have some nice smooth concrete floors. I wanted to interrupt this video to talk about our sponsor for today. Just kidding. I don't have any sponsors. I'm pretty new to making YouTube videos, and all I wanted to say is thank you for watching my videos. It means so much to me that so many of you guys watch them, enjoy them, and comment and ask questions. I love making these videos for you guys. If you do want to support my channel, feel free to click on any of the links in the description below that are affiliate links. They're not all affiliate links, but feel free just to shop through them. Some of them do support my channel, especially the ones on Amazon. And then feel free to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Check out some other videos. I'll link to my channel up here. I try my best to do about one a month, which I know is not the typical YouTube channel thing, but I really like to just narrow down the selection of videos that I make to only ones that I think I would enjoy watching and learning about stuff that I'm doing. And so I don't do it as much as typical YouTube channels. I'm not trying to make money here. I'm just trying to bring you guys content that I think is valuable to watch and learn about. Feel free to subscribe, and let's hop back into the video. I know that it looks complete and ready to seal or to start using, but it's actually pretty low compared to the other flooring and compared to the toilet flange, because I was planning on tiling on top of it. And so now I need to go get some more self-leveling concrete and do one more layer. It's gonna be about another 1/4 inch. We'll probably take about 2 bags for roughly 40 square feet from what my experience was last time. But a few things that you have to do to prep this current concrete to accept the new concrete, the new self-leveling concrete, is prime it, and then it has a very strange waiting time, 3 to 5 hours. This one specifically, definitely read the instructions on different primer if you use a different leveling agent, but this is specifically for, I think it's pronounced MAPI, I don't know exactly how to say it, but the leveling concrete that I'm going to use specifically says to use this primer, so I'm not going to argue. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to prime it using a low pile roller and just one of my old rollers, and we just do a unmodified or unwatered down coat on this surface, wait 5 hours, and then I'll do the rest of the process with you guys this afternoon. So here I'm going to pour some on the substrate, which happens to be the last 2 bags that I used for the self-leveling agent. And you want a pretty generous coat from what I read. So you just pour some on and start rolling until there's an even thin layer of the primer. So I'm going to finish coating the entire bathroom, and then we'll come back for the next step. All right, so now that I got a nice even coat, pretty even coat, doesn't have to be perfect on the old concrete. Now we just have to wait for it to dry. My experience, it took about 3.5 to 4 hours last time, and I think it'll be similar. And then we'll do the pour. But before I do that, I wanted to mention one step that I forgot to tell you. So you can see it's a little messy currently, and I'll come back with a knife, but before you pour the concrete onto the old concrete, you want to seal the edges. And so I use spray foam insulation in some parts, and then as you can see with this transition, I actually used some caulking. What I had that was waterproof just happened to be black. You don't have to use black, you can use whatever caulk that's waterproof, but you want to stop the concrete from flowing into even the smallest of cracks. So I actually had a crack along the center of here that I didn't 100% seal all the way, and it poured into there until it sealed it itself. So I actually lost some of the concrete. You can't see it anymore, but I went around underneath the drywall and then underneath those pieces of wood that will be the curb for the shower, and sealed it to make sure that when I pour the concrete, it doesn't just like flow under the drywall and out of the room or wherever. So you want to make sure you do that. And then we're gonna wait for this to fully dry and fully cure the primer, and then we'll come back. All right, now that the primer has dried, I'm going to put this piece of trim that is made by a company named Schluter in place. That's going to be a transition piece in between the wood flooring and the concrete flooring that we're going to pour. To do this, I'm actually going to just use a small amount of glue. Any kind of adhesive will work for this. It's actually permanently going to be held in place by the concrete that lays over top of it, but I'm going to do this and glue it down now so it doesn't float up. Attach this guy to the concrete here, and then I'll let this dry for a little bit, and then we will pour the concrete. It's time for the fun part. Here's all the supplies that we're gonna need. 2 50-pound bags of self-leveling concrete, a float, we'll get into the sealant in a little bit, something to measure out the water with, a paddle mixer attached to some kind of drill. This is a cheap one from Harbor Freight. Doesn't really matter. I usually go with something that you plug in for these type of jobs, just because I usually just get a cheap one and have it for years, and it just takes a beating, gets all dirty, and it doesn't mess up my nice drills. And then some water that we'll show in a little bit. And then for this job, like I mentioned, 2 50-pound bags of self-leveling concrete, which means 2 buckets to put them in. The first time around, I just used 1 bucket at a time, mixed it up here, brought it down to the basement, poured it, kind of leveled it out with the float, and then came back and was super nervous that that was gonna dry before I got the other one mixed. So I was in a hurry and didn't mix it thoroughly enough. Long story short, this time around, I'm gonna mix both buckets up here. These are about 65 pounds with the water plus the aggregate. I'm gonna mix them both up here. I'm gonna bring one down and then the next one, and then pour them both right after each other, so it's a nice clean process. And I make sure that there's no clumps or dry patches in either one of these batches. Then once it has cured for about 24-36 hours, I'm gonna apply this concrete sealer. I think it's going to work pretty well. It's both for interior and exterior applications, so I'm sure it's going to smell not so great, but it's going to be a great sealant, and then something to apply that sealant as well. And the last thing that you're going to need is some kind of footwear. These are super cheap. I'll link to all this stuff in the description below. What we're going to do is, according to the instructions, you do 5 quarts of water. So pour the water in first, and then grab your handy knife, open this guy, and you pour the whole bag in. Once it's in there, you start mixing, and it says to mix for about 3 minutes, and you just want to make sure that there's no dry clumps anywhere. All right, done with this batch. I'm gonna do this other batch and then I'll meet you in the basement. Now that I got both buckets down, I'm gonna start pouring and using the float to kind of push it into the corners. But for the most part, the most important thing is as you're spreading, you wanna make sure you don't block yourself in so you can't get out. My goal is to not even step in the concrete, the leveling concrete if I don't have to, but I did prepare a little plastic wrap to the wood flooring that butts up to this room, just in case I get a little muddy. So first you just pour a little bit. And then you take your trowel and just, it's almost the consistency of super liquidy peanut butter at this point. So you just want to make sure it gets into all the cracks and corners and crevices. And we're aiming for about a quarter of an inch. You kind of push it into the edges and corners, and then it does the rest of the work for leveling itself. It's pretty awesome. All right, so as you can see, I'm done with the pour. It is just so beautiful how there's some almost marbling that kind of naturally happens. I'm not exactly sure why that happens, but I just think it's really cool. If you don't like that look, you can actually paint over top of it. They have special concrete ceiling paint, but the important thing is it is a flat, beautifully smooth surface that I'm going to let set up for 24 hours, and then we will finish it off with a sealer. You can see I very carefully made sure that it was level with the piece of edging made by Schluter, but otherwise you could have just run it up right against the wood or the other flooring if you're butting up it next to tile or something. So yeah, we'll be back in 24 hours to start the sealing process, and then it'll be ready to be our bathroom. So welcome back. It's been a few days since I poured the concrete, and man, I know you can't see it quite yet because I'm in the way, but it turned out so cool. I'm so excited to show you guys the finished product. I think it's turning out even better than I thought it was going to turn out, which is so cool. So to seal the concrete, I'm going to use this product. I'll link to it in the description below, but you can use any product that you choose to. I went for a satin coat because I don't want it to be super glossy and slippery. It is in the bathroom, so I'm hoping it won't be super slippery when it's wet. And then I just grabbed a foam roller and then a total optional knee pads, but I like to use them anytime I'm working on the floor so I'm nice and comfortable, and I don't get distracted by having pain in my knees. Definitely get yourself a pair of these if you're going to do any floor work, tile work, anything, even putting in click together, wood floor. It's crucial to have comfort in your knees. So I'm going to start the process of sealing the concrete. You want to read the instructions on any of the products. The product that I'm using said it needed to cure for about 72 hours. And so I waited that long, and actually a little bit more. But they're all different, and they all have different curing times and wait times that you have to wait after you put the first coat on and put the second coat on, so on and so forth. So make sure you read all the instructions. Just like I did when I poured the concrete and painted the primer on, we're gonna work ourselves, kind of back ourselves out of the room. And so you don't wanna paint yourself into a corner, literally. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll see the process. And then after it cures and I get 2 coats, we will do a reveal for the final beautiful end product, which I'm so excited to see myself. So let's dive into it. Well, it's been a few days since I sealed, and I wanted to make sure it cured nicely. I started to put in some baseboard, which is super exciting that we're moving forward this process all together. I think it took me a matter of hours, I'd say 4 hours to complete this entire pour. It turned out super awesome. I'm gonna kind of do a close-up of some spots for you to check out yourself, but overall, compared to tiling, I would say this was a night and day experience. It was so much easier than having to level everything first anyway, and then come back and put the membrane down, which I use the Ditra membrane down here in the basement. And so you have to do that process and then tile, make sure everything's level and spaced out correctly, and then wait for it to dry, and then grout, and then wait for that to dry, and then clean up is always a pain. Where this, I think, turned out beautifully and is going to be super functional and last for a long time. Overall, I think this was super successful. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out my other videos on my channel. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, like this video if you enjoyed it. Otherwise, I'm gonna do a close-up of some shots and we will finish this up. Guys, I feel like this turned out so well. Super excited about how level and clean it turned out, and I just love the marbling. Like, what a night and day difference from where I started. You can check out the threshold here. I still need to fill in the gap with some caulking, but once that's done, I have some baseboard fully up. This is gonna be an awesome bathroom floor. As always, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.